Constantinople, established as an imperial capital in 330 AD by Emperor Constantine the Great, stood for more than a millennium as the heart of the Byzantine Empire. It was one of the most strategically and culturally significant cities in the world, but despite its formidable defenses and historical significance, it fell to the Ottoman Empire on May 29, 1453. This event marked the end of the Byzantine Empire and had a profound impact on the world, particularly on Christian Europe. The fall of Constantinople was not only a military victory for the Ottomans, but also a catastrophic turning point in the history of both Eastern and Western civilizations. Background: the deterioration of the Byzantine Empire. In the centuries preceding the Ottoman siege, Constantinople had been besieged numerous times, but had only been captured once, in 1204 during the Fourth Crusade. Despite its historical resilience, by the mid-15th century, the city was in decline. The population had dramatically decreased due to a combination of factors, including the devastating effects of the Black Death. Between 1346 and 1349, the plague killed almost half of Constantinople's inhabitants, weakening the city's ability to defend itself. Additionally, the Byzantine Empire's territorial holdings had shrunk drastically over the centuries. The once vast empire had been reduced to a small area around Constantinople, surrounded by hostile forces, including the growing power of the Ottoman Empire in the east. The rise of Mehmed II. In 1451, Mehmed II ascended to the throne of the Ottoman Empire at the age of 19. His reign would go down in history as one of the most significant for the Ottomans. Many European courts initially underestimated Mehmed's abilities, thinking his youth and inexperience would hinder the Ottomans' military endeavors. However, they were gravely mistaken. Instead of a ruler who would waver or falter, Mehmed was determined to expand the Ottoman Empire at the expense of the Byzantines. Mehmed had long harbored ambitions of capturing Constantinople, seeing it as the key to consolidating his power and expanding his empire into Europe. Unlike many of his predecessors, who had merely made tentative efforts against the Byzantine city, Mehmed was prepared for a full-scale siege. Preparations for the siege. In 1452, just a year before launching the final assault on Constantinople, Mehmed began preparations for the siege. He ordered Turan Beg, a trusted general, to station a large Ottoman garrison at the Peloponnese Peninsula to block any reinforcements or aid from reaching Emperor Constantine XI of the Byzantine Empire. He also ordered the construction of roads and infrastructure to support the movement of Ottoman forces from Adrianople, modern-day Edirne, to Constantinople. The goal was to ensure the Ottoman army would be fully equipped and ready for a protracted siege. Meanwhile, Emperor Constantine XI, who had become increasingly aware of Mehmed's intentions, appealed to Western Europe for assistance. However, the fragmented state of Europe at the time worked against him. France and England were weakened by the aftermath of the 100 Years' War. Spain was embroiled in the Reconquista, and Hungary and Poland had been recently defeated at the Battle of Varna, 1444. The infighting within the Holy Roman Empire also limited any meaningful assistance from the West. Despite the lack of substantial support, some Western Europeans did arrive at Constantinople to help defend the city. Cardinal Isidore, funded by the Pope, brought 200 archers, and Giovanni Giustiniani, a Genoese commander, arrived with 700 men, specifically skilled in defending walled cities. Giustiniani was given command of the defense of the land walls by Emperor Constantine. The Byzantines also hired mercenaries from northern Italy, but their numbers were insufficient to counter the might of the Ottoman army. Constantine's attempts to appease Mehmed by sending gifts ended disastrously when the Sultan executed the emperor's ambassadors. This act ensured that war was now inevitable. Defensive preparations in Constantinople. As the siege of Constantinople approached, Emperor Constantine XI made extensive defensive preparations. He ordered the construction of a defensive chain across the Golden Horn to block Ottoman ships from entering the harbor. The city's land defenses, comprising thick walls and towers stretched over 20 kilometers, making them among the strongest of their time. However, the Byzantine defenders, numbering around 7,000, including mercenaries and volunteers, were vastly outnumbered by the Ottoman army, which boasted 70,000 troops. Despite limited artillery, the Ottomans had elite janissaries, cavalry, and siege weapons, along with a fleet to cut off reinforcements by sea. The Siege of Constantinople begins. On April 2, 1453, the Ottoman forces arrived at the walls of Constantinople. The siege began immediately. Mehmed's army, experienced in siege warfare, began by bombarding the walls with large cannons. The city had formidable defenses, but even the strongest walls were vulnerable to the Ottoman artillery. Mehmed's massive cannons, which were among the largest ever constructed at the time, fired on the city walls for weeks. These cannons had a slow rate of fire and were inaccurate, which allowed the Byzantines some opportunity to repair the damage. Despite these efforts, the bombardment continued and slowly wore down the defenders' morale. The Ottomans also sought to weaken the city's defenses by taking outlying fortresses. Mehmed sent his best troops to capture the remaining Byzantine strongholds surrounding Constantinople. Within a few days, 2 such fortresses fell to Ottoman forces, further isolating the city and cutting off potential escape routes for the defenders. The Ottoman navy and the battle for the harbor. Mehmed's forces not only attacked from the land, but also sought to isolate the city by sea. On April 22, 1453, the Ottomans bypassed the chain barrier placed by the Byzantines at the mouth of the Golden Horn by dragging their ships overland on a road of greased logs. This was a brilliant tactical move that severely undermined the Byzantine defenses, which had relied heavily on their naval strength to defend the harbor. In response, on the night of April 28, the Byzantines launched a desperate counterattack using fire ships to destroy the Ottoman fleet in the Golden Horn. The Ottomans suffered heavy casualties in this battle, but ultimately they drove the Christians back. Despite the Byzantine morale boost from this temporary success, the Ottomans were now firmly in control of the sea and could starve the city into submission. The final assault. As the siege continued, the Byzantines were forced to spread their forces thinner and thinner, trying to defend both the land and sea walls. Despite some brave resistance, the Ottomans eventually launched a massive and concentrated assault on the weakened walls. On May 22, 1453, after weeks of bombardment and unsuccessful frontal assaults, Mehmed ordered a final, all-out attack on the city. The Ottomans focused on a section of the walls that had been built in the 11th century and was considered weaker than the rest. This section of the walls was breached by Ottoman troops after a concentrated assault, and the Ottomans poured into the city. The fall of the city and the death of Emperor Constantine. The final breach of the walls led to a chaotic and bloody battle within the city. Constantine XI, who had led the defense of the city with great courage, fought alongside his soldiers in the streets. However, his forces were no match for the overwhelming Ottoman numbers. During the final stages of the battle, Constantine was killed in action, and the remaining defenders were overwhelmed. As the Ottomans poured into the city, many civilians attempted to flee, but they were captured and either enslaved or killed. The Ottomans looted the city, desecrating churches and stripping homes of valuables. Despite initial efforts to preserve the lives of civilians, many were either killed for resisting or sold into slavery. Aftermath of the Fall of Constantinople. The Fall of Constantinople was a catastrophic event for the Byzantine Empire and for Europe as a whole. The city was largely in ruins, with its churches desecrated and its population decimated. Many of Constantinople's inhabitants were either killed or forced into slavery, and those who were ransomed could return to their homes, though few had homes to return to. The city had been reduced to rubble, and the Ottomans quickly began to rebuild it, making it the new capital of their empire, renaming it Istanbul. The loss of Constantinople had a profound impact on Europe. Many Christian Europeans saw it as the end of an era, marking the fall of one of the last great Christian empires. It also set the stage for the Ottomans to expand further into Europe, threatening other Christian kingdoms. The fall of Constantinople marked the end of the Byzantine Empire and the beginning of the Ottoman Empire's dominance in the region. If you enjoyed this deep dive into the fall of Constantinople, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more historical insights. Don't forget to ring the bell so you never miss an exciting episode. Thanks for watching, and stay curious.